Hey guys, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Matthew Denton. I'm currently an undergraduate senior in the new media class with you guys who are listening. So for today's podcast, I wanted to talk about my project, which is about finding identities through social media. And in the beginning of this project, I was only focusing on youth and like youth finding identities through social media. And I found as I went further into this study that there's a whole other demographic that I wanted to focus on more, which is kind of like adolescents and stuff. So I basically did this survey that all of you guys, I'm pretty sure, responded to, as well as a few others through a link that I posted on social media, just to gather some data about, identities through social media. So today I have a very special guest to go over this with, and she's one of my best friends, and I just felt like I needed someone else, their perspective on this issue, and I feel like we always have conversations like this anyway, and so I just thought, why not bring her on the podcast? So everyone, this is Karamis.
Hey guys! So I am a junior here at Charlotte. I'm so excited to talk about all of these comments that we got back. It's really interesting because Matthew and I talk about all of this stuff all the time, like you mentioned before. But yeah, I'm so excited.
All right, let's just get into it. So one of the questions I asked, which doesn't surprise me with the answers given, did you find this identity online that made you feel included or seen? Majority of people said yes, but there was a good portion that said no, which is a little shocking. One that really did shock me, and I feel like shocked you as well, is the question, did you grow up seeing or hearing about various identities aside from the one you identify with? And a lot of people said yes, and very few people said no, and this really shocked me because, I mean, growing up where I grew up in a very rural community, conservative, like, household and stuff like that, like, I just didn't really, I don't know, I didn't really, like, grow up seeing or hearing any of, like, different identities other than, like, heterosexual, like, male and female. Like, it wasn't, like, there were no other, like, gender identities.
Yeah. For me as well, I grew up in a really Christian household. I'm actually a pastor's kid. So I feel like my family really, like, protected me. That would be their terms, not mine. But they protected me from the outside world or what they valued or saw that wasn't right, which I don't agree with. By the way, I am part of the LGBTQ community.
Yes.
But so I feel like I didn't really know about it, and I feel like the social media and the internet does play a role into how I figured out my sexuality and, like, a lot of things. But, like, growing up, I didn't really hear about the LGBTQ community or, like, other identities and, like being cisgender, being transgender, like, all of that stuff was really new to me. Like, at least, like, I think when high school hit, that's when I really started hearing about it, but not really. I think more college.
Yeah, I mean,
which is kind of sad to really think about.
Well, I feel like not only that, but I feel like the world in general has changed so much to where, like, we have conversations about, like, pronouns and things like that. Like, that was not a thing when we were growing up. I mean, if it was, like, we just didn't hear about it or know about it. And I feel like that also stems from, like, fear as well as, like, being, like, as you said, like, in church and stuff. Like, there was, like, if you did hear about, like, other people, like their sexualities, like, differing from, like, the heteronormative, like, it was frowned upon, and it kind of just made you, at least for me, it just made me feel kind of isolated, and, like, was it truly this thing that, like, people are, like, not okay with, and, like, so I feel like that's another thing of, like, how maybe like we just didn't want to see it or hear it. I don't know. I really don't know. It's like a whole psychological analysis on that, but
yeah, and we could really jump into that, but like we have
yeah,
so
we
many
have
other questions.
So this one I wanted to read some responses. And the question is, do you believe that social media or the internet is an inclusive space for those struggling with identity? If so, can you provide more insight? I'm just gonna go through some of these responses. One person says, I believe that the internet is inclusive. It is a good source of information and has many different communities individuals can be a part of, which I agree with.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I also found this comment really interesting. It says, I believe social media is inclusive in bringing new or under-recognized communities together and gives them a platform to share news within the community. However, it can also be just as isolating with online harassment inflicted by other communities. Media gives people a platform to spread good, but an equal amount of hate through the comfort of anonymity. I said that right. Yeah, I did.
And that's a word too. Like jumping, like I'm gonna let you like say why you found it so interesting. But that word I found to continuously pop up throughout the responses, and I didn't know what it meant, and I looked it up, and it's basically the act of being anonymous, which is really interesting. But.
Yeah. But I just found this interesting because I believe social media can be so inclusive. Like, there are certain platforms where you hear so much about, like, the LGBTQ community. Like, if we jump into TikTok, I feel like the algorithm plays a huge part, though. If you don't get on the right side of TikTok, it could blow up in your face. Like, if, just an example, if I were to post something about being a lesbian or being gay or anything like that, and it pops up on, like, the conservative side of TikTok, like the people who don't really approve of that lifestyle, you can get so much hate from it, and there's so much harassment that comes from it. And I feel like TikTok sometimes says, yes, like, we don't like this, like, your account's gonna get banned, all of this stuff. But at the same time, I feel like they don't really care as much. I've seen in a lot of instances where people get hate for being who they are, and everyone's just like, TikTok, do something, like, take their account away, do something, and they don't do anything. So I feel like that comment was so true. If you don't get on the right side of, like, a platform, there could be so much hate. But if you get on, like, the side where everyone's inclusive, there's so much love and acceptance. And yeah, so that was something that was really interesting to me to think about.
And I also, like, piggybacking off of that, I don't even know if that's even the thing, but anyway, I feel like with certain like creators have had issues with their video being taken down, and it's like not causing any harm. It's just like to like same-sex couples, or like someone talking about like gender identity, or like someone's transition journey. Like I've seen like a lot of videos being taken down, and I don't know if it's the amount of hate it receives that TikTok's like, oh, like, we need to make this like media platform like not have that, so their best bet is to like, oh, let's just take this video down, like, it's too much, or like, I don't know.
I want to jump into that. That's so interesting. The way I see it is, if you aren't a big creator, if you don't have 1 million followers, if you're not big and you're like talking about your transition, then it's like you will receive so much hate. Like, I've seen instances where like small creators are like talking about their transition, like transgender males, transgender women, like talking about their transition, and because they don't have a big platform, it's like TikTok takes advantage of that.
Yeah.
And I just find that so like confusing, because everyone keeps saying like, this is an inclusive platform, like, everyone's accepting, And in reality, like, we wish everyone was accepting, but, like, not everyone's gonna be accepting of who you are, and that's okay. Like, no, at the end of the day, if you're happy within yourself and you know who you are, then it shouldn't matter what other people say. But it's, like, so crazy to me to think about, like, if you're not big, then you're not gonna get recognized. You're not gonna get your videos out there. You might not even get, like, as much, like, views and likes and stuff because you're not a big creator. But yeah, sorry, that was like, I took that in like a different route.
No, I feel like, because I feel like how it is, and I feel like going I could talk about TikTok and like this all day, but
yeah, me too.
I don't know, let's just, I guess, continue to the next one because we're gonna get so caught up
because there's really good questions. So sorry guys, we're just looking really quick.
Scrolling. One of the questions that I wanted to dive in, I guess, with our personal connections with the question, describe the first time you saw or heard someone or something that helped you navigate how you identify. And I put in parentheses, like, this can be a character in a movie, someone online, or anything like media related. I can go first, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
So for me, obviously a lot of people grew up watching Disney. And I watched the reboot of like The Boy Meets World to Girl Meets World. And one of the actresses, Rowan Blanchard, later came out as genderqueer. And at that point in my life, I was like taken back. I was like, what is genderqueer? Like, what is like gender fluid? Like, there was a lot of different celebrities, especially like Miley Cyrus coming out as gender fluid around this time too. Like, there was a lot of new things that I was just like, what is this? And so this really generated my curiosity, and I did a lot of research and I read a lot of like articles on it. And Rowan Blanchard coming out and me like being curious about this term like helped me identify myself as a genderqueer individual. And I would have never, I mean, there might have been a possibility like later down the line like I would see it, but I feel like never like from someone. Like, I feel like I wouldn't see it in real time if it weren't for like media. So that's why I'm like a big like media supporter, as in like youth or like people who are like figuring out their identity. Like, I feel like without media, anything media, like I would feel isolated. Like, I would not know who I am if it weren't for media. But I know that's not the case for everyone, so I don't want to like say like, oh, like media is the only option. Like, obviously it's not, but I feel like for me personally, without it, I would be extremely lost.
Yeah. Just to piggyback off of that. So like I said before, I grew up in a very like conservative household, Christian household, very much different views from a lot of people. And so that made me really struggle with like my sexuality, because yes, I liked I was attracted to boys, but it just wasn't the same attraction that I had to girls. And so that confused me a lot. And so then I decided to like say I was bisexual. And then I started looking up what's being bisexual, what's all of this. And then I got into YouTube, and this person, her name is Georgia Bridgers. I don't know if you guys know her, but she's really popular on like YouTube and like social media. And she really helped me with like my identity and like finding who I was and what I liked. And she really like dumbed it down so like I could really understand what was my sexuality, what did I like. And she like told her stories, and she just really helped. And I feel like also I know this is something else, but at the time that I was looking up these videos and like finding all of these creators, I also felt like there wasn't a lot of inclusivity with like gender queer and like transgender, it was either you were a lesbian, gay, or bi. There weren't like anything else you could be. And I feel like now in this generation, like in 2022 especially, there is so many things you could identify as, so many sexualities. Like, you could honestly be anything. Like, there are so many terms out there, like, that I don't even know. And it's amazing how much, like, social media can play a part in helping you figure out who you are as a person and what your values, like, what are your values, who do you want to be, who could you be, could you like this person? Could you like that person? Could you like multiple people at the same time? Could you be in an open relationship? Like, there's so much out there, and it just blows my mind.
Yeah, because I feel like growing up, we just didn't hear it, and I feel like we sound old, but
yeah,
it's like this new generation. I feel like, oh my god, I do sound so old. Like, this new generation, like, I feel like is so open-minded. And it just gives me, like, a lot of hope that, like, a lot of people don't have to experience, like, stuff that we kind of did, like, just growing up and, like, again, bringing up, like, this kind of, like, idea or, like, this fear of, like, I don't know how to, like, put it into words.
Yeah, I feel like what you're trying to say is, like, people now in this generation, the, like, children and the teens that are growing up, they're getting to see a different side of our society and like how we can make a change, even though there was a old norm of what was right and what was wrong. I feel like there's more inclusivity, and there is more openness for people to question, to have debates, to talk, to be able to just communicate about things instead of just lashing out because these are my views. And I'm not saying your views are wrong. If you think, well, yikes.
Let's get into
it. Different religions are going to have their different views and their different values, and that's okay. At some point, I feel like it should be okay for everyone to have different views on things and be able to communicate about them and express how we feel, how each side feels, and be okay with just letting it be from there. Not making someone change what they think or who they are. Because I know for me, I have been able to have debates and like actual conversations with Christians who don't really believe in homosexuality, don't really believe in like those things, but I feel like it's okay for us to have different views and just leave it from there, because some people aren't gonna change, and it's not like they tried to force me to change who I am. So I feel like it should be okay to just leave it where it is, not try to change someone just because they think differently than you.
Yeah, like, I feel like I just think, like, let people be themselves. Like, don't try to, like, down someone or just spread, like, hate speech. Like, I know we had, like, a group on campus recently that were, like, a part of a hate group. Like, it's just not okay to spread hate. Like, we can have differences, but just don't, like, let people live their lives. Let people express themselves. Let people be their authentic selves. Like, I just can't stress that enough. See, what other questions? Well, like, a lot of the responses were talking about, like, some people, like, a lot of people were talking about, not, like, a movie or anything, like, was the first time they saw or heard someone or something that helped them navigate their identity, but, even a friend or, like, a person that they came across, which is really, like, that kind of shocked me, just because I feel like with me growing up, I didn't really have a friend that was, you know, like, I mean, they probably were questioning their identity and like
Yeah.
sexuality, as a lot of people do. Like, it's very human not to admit like such personal things.
Yeah.
But I just never had a lot of conversations with like my friends growing up, until I came out as gay, obviously in middle school. But like, it was just interesting to see a lot of people talk about how, you know, they talk to people one-on-one, like in person. I think that's so great. It gives me like just this overwhelming like happiness of like, you know, we're able to communicate not only through social media, which branches off to so many different ways to communicate, but just a regular like conversation face to face, like being open and just talking, not feeling like fearful of judgment or criticism or any negative like, you know, backlash on it. It just, I don't know, that was just shocking to me. I feel like as one of the responses that a lot of people said was just a conversation.
Yeah, and I also feel like it's so interesting how like one person brought up like their family member being part of the community, and like being able to talk to them about it has really opened them up to accept their sexuality and who they like, which is so like interesting. And it's amazing to think about how some families have such inclusive topics, and like they talk about inclusivity and who they are, and other families don't.
They're so closed off.
Yeah, and it's just really fun to hear about different ideas and different views and different
Dynamics.
stories. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if you have something else to say.
Well, that's, I mean, I love how the word of the day is piggyback. No, but like just
To piggyback.
yeah, to piggyback on that, I don't know, I've just always like, even like watching like, I remember someone mentioned The Fosters, which was such a pivotal show growing up, of like learning about sexuality and stuff like that. It's just, I've always like obviously love my family, but like I've always wanted that like someone to talk to and be open with, which throughout the years that person's been my mom, obviously, because you know, ever since I came out, it's been a whole, I mean, at the beginning it was, you know, it was difficult, but I mean, you know, she came around and now we talk about every and anything, and there's a lot that I teach her, as well as she's always taught me, but there's a lot of things I'm teaching her even as like a 50-year-old lady, like, you know, like she's still learning like what's right, what's like not okay to like say, like, you know. And so I just thought it was really interesting that, you know, there are like people who like grew up with like just knowing and just having these people in their lives where like they didn't even have to search on the internet. I mean, even someone had mentioned like their aunt being a transgender woman, and I think that's so incredible to have a role model in your life that is a part of this community that's so inclusive. And I know for me, like growing up, and I know I keep mentioning growing up, but I feel like it plays like a key role in like media, which is the core you know, example of this whole podcast episode. I just never knew about other people's identities like transgender. I never heard of that until social media, and I just thought it was really cool that, you know, there are people out there that grow up with knowing different identities and being surrounded by it. And I feel like social media has become some people's chosen family. And yeah, I found it very interesting, this whole entire study that I did. I didn't expect all the like great responses. I wish I could read them all. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Karamis, for, you know, joining me on this podcast.
No, I loved it. I love having all of these conversations and reading all of these responses. It was a really interesting little chat, so hopefully we can do something again.
I know. This is really like, I feel like inspired me to like want to continue it. But
Yeah.
thank you for joining, and thank you for those who are listening. And for those of you who responded, it really meant a lot. And yeah, I hope you guys had fun, and
We'll see you
we'll
next
see
week. I'm kidding. Bye.
Bye. Hey guys, so for those of you who don't know me, my name's Matthew Ditton. I'm currently an undergraduate senior in the new media class with you guys who are listening. So for today's podcast, I wanted to talk about my project, which is about